Do-do-do-do-do. Theme song. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. So last Sunday, I sent out this tweet on Twitter because, yeah, that's where you send out tweets. I'd like to bring more attention to my and other Canadian YouTube channels. Would any content creators like to be on my show or have me on theirs to chat about stuff people chat about? I received a reply from Screaming Into the Wind. I'm in the US, but wouldn't mind jumping into a chat later this afternoon. I've been trying to get my channel started, and this would be my first footprint on YouTube. Even though he was from the US, I was open to this because one of the things I've been promoting on my channel and through Twitter is more cross-border solidarity because we are fighting a lot of the same battles. So I quickly looked through his Twitter feed and he looked like a cool person, a lefty from Georgia, which is interesting. I thought, why not give it a shot? We sent a couple DMs to each other and it turns out he had no idea who I was and I had no idea who he was. We had no idea what we were doing and didn't prep any topics ahead of time. We were both taking a chance with each other. What could possibly go wrong? Well, lots could possibly go wrong in those sorts of situations. But what did happen was a fantastic conversation covering a variety of subjects. I can't speak for him, but I felt like I was catching up with an old friend. Please enjoy what I'm sure will be the first of many conversations and give a warm welcome to David Carter from Screaming Into the Wind and support him by following him on Twitter and subscribing to his channel. Link in the description box below. We're recording. We're up.
We are recording. How are you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing okay. I guess we should do proper introductions for our audiences. I am Sandy Lovis, Left of the Box, here in Ontario, Canada, talking with David.
I'm David. I'm David Carter. My channel, mine and my wife's channel actually, is called Screaming Into the Wind. We are located in Georgia, in the United States. Mm-hmm. Pretty far away from Ontario, but you know we're all the way down here, and where it's already hot, and we're gonna have a little bit of a leftist discussion.
Yeah. So is this your first time trying to record something like this?
Yes, this is going to be my first little footprint into YouTube. Oh. I've been trying to get the channel going for quite some time. Really, the biggest factor is right now I'm talking to you through a laptop. I've been trying to save up to get a desktop. I need something that can process a lot faster than what I'm working with now. This laptop is a little old, and I don't really. It's very slow. So yeah, we were trying to wait until I could get maybe some better internet service or maybe something faster. But I had the opportunity to come on with you, and I was like, hey, you know what? We're gonna put my first little footprint in the sand right now. So.
So you just kind of saw my little blast out on Twitter and thought, yeah, why not?
Yeah. You wanted some Canadian discourse, and I was like, no, well, I'm in the States, so I'll comment and see if she wants to talk with an American leftist.
Well, the funny thing is that I was actually tempted to put in that tweet, you know, I am willing to take pity on American content creators and go on them as well, or something along that lines. I was trying to think, how do I make that comical? And then I'm like, I'll stick to the Canadians because we're trying to build our leftist network up here, and I see a lot of collaborations and stuff, and I just kind of want to be like, you know, I'm here, I can collaborate too. But one of my actual goals though is to get more cross-border solidarity going, because really, we're fighting all the same battles, like all of them.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's there's really not, from what I understand, and of course, correct me at any point during this if I'm incorrect about Canada, but it seems like you guys are in a fairly similar situation to the one we're in. It's just, I guess it's just not as exaggerated as ours is. Ours is very, America's going through some stuff.
Yeah. It's a lot worse up here than most people know, and even most Canadians know, because if you have a good income if your health is relatively good, you think the quality of life up here is great. You don't really think, oh, it's not that racist up here, or, our healthcare system is great and stuff. But when you're getting lower income, like for someone like me, I actually live on disability, what the government gives us is pennies. Like just, it's about 40 to 60% below the poverty line.
Oh, wow.
And that's what we're expected to live on. And so each province here they make their own wages for people on disability. And there hasn't been an increase in years and years and years. Like even during the pandemic, one of the things I scream about all the time when I see on Twitter, and I try to correct them as much as possible, is when Americans say, oh yeah, Canadians, they got $2,000 a month for the pandemic. No, we did not. No.
I have heard that as a common talking point, talking about Canada. No.
Not a single Canadian got $2,000 a month.
That's crazy. So what? No, go ahead.
Basically what it was is that there was a rush to get it out. And so you could call up and get $2,000 a month. Now, here's the thing. It wasn't taxed at source. So if you called up and you didn't save money for taxes, you're going to have a very rude awakening come this tax season.
Yeah.
Which meant you didn't actually get the full $2,000 that they keep on saying. The other problem is that this $2,000 was means tested. Not everyone could apply for it, and yet they didn't do that means testing ahead of time. You could just call the number and get it. And so after, it was only a 7-month program, and after that, if it turned out you didn't qualify for it, they'd then be like, oh yeah, you now owe us $14,000.
Oh. Yeah, no, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm sure. Wow. I mean,
and like for people like me on disability, it was such a slap in the face because we get roughly half of that $2,000 that the federal government said is the bare minimum that people need to live off of. And yet we weren't able to apply for it.
And you said that was because you're on disability?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so people on disability couldn't apply for it. You had to have lost your job because of COVID. So if you were already lost your job or looking for a job or were a student, you didn't qualify for it.
Right.
And even people who had jobs, like it was so misleading the way that people were talking about it, that there's a lot of innocent people who is like, oh, our government is looking out for us, so I'm just going to call this number and get this money. Because if you don't pay close attention to the media, that's exactly what you think is happening. Just to then later on find out, no, you now owe that money back. And at the beginning, there was also another massive mix-up where you had to have made $5,000 over the previous year in order to qualify. What they did not clarify was the gross versus net. So it was $5,000 net, not gross. And so a lot of people, and it's usually the lowest income people, made over 5,000 gross. But once all the deductions, taxes, it was under. And so at the end of the 7-month program, there was a huge backlash over that when people found out that was an issue, because now all these people are suddenly being forced to pay back all this money. And so the government actually did finally give into that backlash and said, okay, if you made an honest mistake, you don't have to worry about it. But then that's a slap into the face of all the people who understood it ahead of time and missed out on getting that money now.
Yeah.
When they would have desperately needed it.
Yeah. So how's the sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask, so how did the process work of them approving the so-called $2,000 for each of you? Is it like a parliamentary thing that had to go through? Was it just something that Trudeau came straight down with? Was it a...
It was done on the federal level. So, the provinces weren't that involved in it. And they could just basically pass the bill to make this happen. Now, the thing that people also don't realize is that Trudeau is taking all the credit for it, whereas they probably would have never passed it if it wasn't for the NDP. Because right now, my government's in a minority situation. So since we have a parliamentary system, we have about 5 different parties actually at the federal level. And the Liberal government itself does not have 50% of the votes. So they have to vote with another party in order to pass legislation. So the NDP could hold up the Liberals for other bills, put pressure on them, or when the Liberals were trying to pass a bill, they could say, we're not going to agree with you unless you add this. So it took tremendous pressure from the NDP to actually make it so that some people got that $2,000. And then even later on, students weren't originally included in that. So the NDP again pushed. And then another similar system came into place for students, which also was in their mess up, because if you had applied for CERB, the first one, and then went for the student one, then it was a mess. And the NDP also had to put a push on the federal government to freeze interest rates on student loan debts, only temporarily, because the federal government then reinstated it. So students are now still accumulating interest on their debts, even though nobody can work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
And
yeah,
then
you guys,
basically,
you guys definitely have it worse than what news is telling us, about Canada. Basically, what the discourse is on the left, because on the left in America, we like to use Canada as a we use you guys kind of as a football to kind of sit there and tell our conservatives, our Republican Party, like, hey, Canada's getting this, Germany's getting this, the UK's getting this, and we can, the Scandinavian nations are getting this. Like we're using, you guys, and it's good to hear from an actual Canadian what is actually taking place there, because it never really is like what you're told from across borders, or especially from overseas and from
Europe. And sure. Like the thing is that generally speaking, we're better situationed up here than the average American. Like I don't argue that, but the little joke I have about that is my spelling might be better than a 4-year-old, but it's still so bad. You need a code breaker to read my notes. And that's the situation. But again, since a lot of Canadians aren't that plugged into the media, and what they actually see of politics is more American than Canadian. So there were more Canadians engaged in the $15 minimum wage fight in the United States than they are here. We don't have a $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
We've been fighting for a $15 minimum wage, and our $15 is the equivalent to $11.90 American. So we're not even fighting for the same amount.
Yeah. Oh yeah, America is in my opinion, I don't think we're anywhere close to getting a $15 minimum wage. Our minimum wage has been stagnant for it's been over a decade. Minimum wage has been stagnant, and it's crazy because here in America, and that's another key issue that leftists bring up here in America, is the fact that minimum wage in America hasn't kept up with inflation or with productivity since the 70s into the 80s. It hasn't kept up with it. It's just we are demanded to be more and more productive, work harder, work longer, get a second job, get a third job, blah blah blah, but the wages are stagnating, and that's a really big issue. And that's one reason that I'm so adamant when I talk to friends here in the States about, like, I try to make sure I point out, hey, you do know that we have, workers have rights. You know that, right? Like we are supposed to, at least. Now, the American establishment has been really good at snipping away at those over the last several decades. But, it doesn't have to be like this. Like, we are supposedly the wealthiest nation on the planet. The United States supposedly is. There's never been a wealthier nation on the planet. We can afford this. Like, and a lot of these problems could be fixed, and I'm sure Canada has the same issue. A lot of these problems would be fixed if we would just make the rich pay their fair share, hold corporations accountable, and we have to do a better job as leftists of, I don't really want to say hold liberals' feet to the fire. That's kind of been a used up term by a lot of people who are kind of on the left. They'll say that, oh, we're just going to For us, it's the Democrats. You know, hey, we're just going to elect the Democrat, and we're going to hold their feet to the fire. Like, and it's like, I don't really like saying it like that. It's really more of, we need to work starting at the local level, getting more progressive and leftist representation at a local level, and then at a state level, and then we can talk about a federal level, because the left has no representation here in America.
Sorry, just a quick note, when you hit your table, your camera jiggles a lot.
Sorry. I'm very
That's okay.
I'm very talky with my hands. I'm very expressive. I like
that's
to
okay.
act
Just, you're shaking a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, in Canada, I know you guys hold us up as like this ideal, and again, as long as most of the Canadians can say, well, at least we're better than them, they put up with what we have, which isn't good enough, because if we actually compared ourselves to one of the Nordic countries, one of the more socialist countries, we don't match up. Like earlier this year, just within the past couple months, there's been a couple of bills that went through. So the Liberals and the Conservatives teamed up to vote against a wealth tax on the wealthiest people and on the corporations that made gains over the pandemic. Because the NDP had proposed it, but they teamed up against it. They also teamed up against pharmacare for all, because our prescriptions are not covered in our healthcare systems. So they do tend to be cheaper than what's in the States because of the deals they have going on with the pharma companies, but they're not free unless, like, luckily in my province, my disability will cover it for now. But when you get into pension age and stuff like that, your pension doesn't cover medications. You have to have a different program going. And when you're broke, it really doesn't matter if your prescription is $30 or $300. You can't afford it. And people will die because of this, when it was just so close to being done. And then here's another heartbreaking thing to add on top of that. We have a bill up here called C7, and that's the short form of it is MAID, which is Medical Assistance in Dying. So we have dying with dignity and all that sort of stuff. But again, the Liberals just voted with the Parti Québécois to allow an amendment to it so that people who are disabled and have mental health issues can now apply for it. So they won't help us to live, but they're saying, yeah, but if you want to die, we'll give you the drugs for that.
Yeah.
And that is, it is so beyond belief that they would do this. Like, they're not going to make sure that we get the housing we need, the help we need, the support we need, the income we need to be able to buy groceries. But they made it a hell of a lot easier for us to die.
Yeah. We're in a very similar situation. When all of this started, when the pandemic hit, for one, we had Trump in office. So I knew, and honestly, not just the fact that it was Trump, had it have been any Republican from an American standpoint, we knew it wasn't going to be handled properly. We knew there wasn't going to be a lot of fast action. We knew kind of going into it that this may extend for a while, but we didn't think it was going to extend out this long. And there have been people who have been unemployed since this began, early last year, like, who aren't getting any help. The most we've gotten is we got a $1,200 stimulus like mid last year ish. We got another $600, and then we just got a $1,400.
Yeah.
But I mean, you total that, and that's what, $3,400. That's what is it? Yeah. So 18. Yeah, or 3,200. That's $3,200.
You could make up a number right now, and I'll take your word for it. I don't math.
It's $37 and a Werther's original caramel candy.
Werther's
are much. Werther's are delicious.
They are.
Yeah. And you know, if for those who are unemployed, they get a small bag, like one of the snack size bags of Werther's that have like 3 or 4 in them. But no. But I'm pretty sure, yes, $3,200 that we've gotten over the course of over a year now, and that's it. Like, and also in America, we don't, like, pharmaceuticals here are insane. My wife actually has a health disorder. She actually suffers from a seizure disorder, and she takes 2 seizure meds. One of them, she just fell off of her insurance plan. We're actually in the middle of, we got an extension to be able to apply to get her some insurance. It's just really expensive here. Health insurance is crazy in the United States.
Yeah.
But one of her prescriptions without insurance is going to run her about $1,500 a month. That's one of her 2 seizure meds. And I don't make that kind of money. We both work. She doesn't make that kind of money. Like it's just, and she also takes other meds on top of that. Each of these things cost money. She's on several different prescriptions, but it's just a thing where for a lot of Americans and a lot of Canadians, it sounds alike. It's just, the fact is we work to pay in to our government to do something for us. That's the whole point. Our tax dollars are supposed to work for us. And the fact is that you're gonna sit here and you're gonna string us on like you're gonna string us along with little $1,200 here, $600 here, $1,400 here. It was supposed to be $2,000, but you back it off to $1,400, and then it becomes they keep snipping it away. But for some reason, the largest corporations can just get. It's like they just print money for them.
Yeah,
and that's the part that just upsets us.
And again, people don't realize that up here in Canada. Like, again, my heart breaks for the situation in the States because it is a lot worse. Yeah. That's not even a doubt in my mind. I understand it's a lot worse. And again, that's why so many Canadians don't bother demanding more. But we have, again, a lot of the similar problems. Like, corporations got hundreds of millions of dollars during this pandemic for relief that they were supposed to maybe pass on to their employees that they never did. And yet there was another assistance for small businesses, and if you did one typo in it, they're now demanding you pay that back, even though your company got $2,000 a month or something like that. And yet all of these big corporations who made profits during this are getting hundreds of millions of dollars. And it makes me sick. Like, for here in Ontario and Quebec, one situation in particular just is so beyond outrageous, because when this pandemic first started, it wasn't covered in the news much. They had to call in the military to our long-term care homes because the situation was so bad, because these homes had been privatized. So they had to call in the military to get this under control. And there were reports of some of the service members being traumatized by what they saw.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then the Ontario government then goes around and gives $170 million to the shareholders of these long-term care homes. And none of that money went towards improving the conditions or anything. And when you look at the statistics in Canada as to where people are dying from COVID, it is by far our long-term care homes are being decimated. That's where the majority of our cases are coming from.
Yeah. Well, it's a similar situation to us. I know probably what made most of the news on your end was probably how the senior care in New York, how that was handled and how terribly that was handled. That was one of the major stories that came out of the States as far as COVID and being dealt with as far as with because the seniors are the ones who are the most susceptible, or some of the most susceptible, and then people with weakened immune systems. But yeah, it's just the way that these governments are taking our tax dollars and not even letting it work for the people. They're just letting it work for they're just letting it work for the owners of these nations, basically the big corporate executives. They still get their planes, and they still get their bonuses, and they still get their nice salaries, and they're not losing anywhere. They don't even have to work, period. And the whole thing and the thing that upsets me from coming from the left in America is the fact that in America, and I'm sure you experience the same thing in Canada, if you so much as suggest, hey, maybe can we take the people who make over $10 million and tax them an extra few percent, and they decry it because they say that's socialism. And I'm like, that's nowhere near. We're not even talking social democracy. We're not even talking, much less democratic socialism, much less socialism. This is all we're doing is trying to level the playing field, because a virus doesn't discriminate. A virus doesn't care who you are.
Mm-hmm.
If it can get you, it's going to get you. It doesn't work like that. You can't. And the fact of the matter is, so many people in America just. Another problem with Americans is there's so much entitlement from people who think they live in like the land of the free, and being told to wear masks when you go out in public is just the biggest deal for them. Like they think it's just an invasion of their personal freedoms, and we're like, no, we just don't want you spitting on other people and making them sick. And it frustrates us, those of us who are to the left of everything, because the entire right just, it took a month to even acknowledge that this thing exists, much less try to do anything about it. Now half of our government, the Republican side, they don't want to give us any help.
Yeah.
And the Democrats are just going to snip it away any chance they get.
Yeah, and we're running into the problem where Americans don't know how connected Canadians are to American media, because that's where most of our media does come from. So when Americans talk about like Canadians, oh, they don't know what's happening. No, we know exactly what's happening. And part of our problem is that all the Facebook accounts are linked because most of us have family or work or have connections to the United States. So all of these like QAnon and conspiracy theories and the anti-maskers, that's spreading up here as well. I made a video not too long ago about tiki torch marches in Alberta. And yes, racist. But it was under the guise of anti-masking. So
were these like a series of like white nationalist groups? Were they just conservatives in Canada? Were they?
It was the people who arranged the marches were known white supremacists of some sort. But they did it under the guise of anti-lockdown, anti-masking, that sort of thing. So as I explained in my video, like I'm sure there were some people who are just COVID enthusiasts who showed up to these, not aware of the layers that were involved with this. But it's so subtle, and that's how it breaks in, and that's how it breaks through. Because even in my town, my city here, there's people not wearing masks. There's people who get into fights about it. At least I have one friend who said what her uncle does is, especially in an elevator, is if they're stuck in an elevator with somebody who's not wearing a mask, he'll just go into a coughing fit and then look over at the person when they get uncomfortable and say, now, don't you wish you had a mask on? Apparently it works.
Not in America. that wouldn't. I don't know if you've ever watched them. There are plenty of videos on YouTube of the compilation videos of anti-maskers walking into stores that require face masks to go in. And these people are the most entitled, angry, just selfish and self-righteous people. And they don't listen to anybody. They think that because they got their degree in Google, where they go to their like woo-woo COVID conspiracy theory websites and they read an article written by some wine mom in the suburbs about how the masks actually make you more sick. They read it once and they just, yep, that's how I'm going to live my life. That's boom, America. And I hate to hear that it's spreading to Canada. Yeah. But yeah, typically when in America, if we have tiki torch marches, there's typically one group of people who's doing it, and it sounds like it's the same group of people.
Yeah, well, Proud Boys is a Canadian export.
Oh, for real? Oh, yeah. I did not know that, actually.
No, you have us, Gavin McDaniels,
Kevin McGinnis is Canadian, huh? Oh, you know what? Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, that's on us.
It's okay. We have all kinds of militias down here that I have plenty of things to say about.
Well,
but,
at least up here we're not as armed, so there's that.
Woo! Yeah. There's a few things in America you don't touch, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
That's how Americans treat it. But it's
yeah.
It all just kind of, I think it all boils down to just the way that you're brought up in America. You're brought up to, like, from a young age in school, you're brought up to just believe that you live in the greatest country on earth. Like, you're indoctrinated with it your entire life. You live in the greatest country ever. You live in the strongest country ever. You live in the most powerful country ever.
And in Canada, I think that's, again, where one of the major divides are, because from what I see, there is a little bit more of, looking out for each other up here, like a little bit more of we're in it together. I'm not saying we are, but there is a little bit more that we expect more from our government.
Right.
We expect more supports. Whether or not we get them isn't their issue. And I haven't personally run into issues with anti-maskers around here. I do know they exist. I don't have any friends or family that have been kind of swayed into these outrageous conspiracy theories, even though my mom has admitted to voting conservative. But even, we have our premier right now who is very similar to Trump in a lot of ways, and my mom couldn't bring herself to vote for him because she sees him for what he is. Unfortunately, most of the province does not, because if there was an election held today, he would still get into power despite an obscene list of things that he has done that is just horrendous.
Wow.
But again, there's a phrase that isn't quite known well enough. Like, I only recently heard about it, and it's called maple washing. And it's when you give this image, this idea of Canada being this peacekeeping, friendly, polite nation. And Justin Trudeau is also very good at that image. Keep in mind, Justin Trudeau has worn blackface multiple times as an adult. And, like, again, when I see Canadians go onto American shows, like podcasts and stuff in particular, and I always get so upset when the American's like, oh, so how is the racism up there? And the white Canadian man says, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah. Americans will say that too.
Yeah.
So are you speaking about, I'm sorry, I was looking it up. Are you talking about Doug Ford?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. I sincerely apologize for not knowing very much about Canadian politics. I really do feel bad. So I'm trying to kind of learn as I'm listening to you.
No, that's okay. And that's part of the reason why I want the bit more of the cross-border solidarity, because a lot of Canadians will act smug towards Americans. And some of it is because we have the better healthcare system. We feel like we're in a better situation. I think the majority of it comes from the fact we know a lot more about you guys than you know about us.
Yeah. And well, actually, as a matter of fact, some of the larger, well, a couple of the larger lefty YouTube personalities are Canadians in America. I know you got your couple that I enjoy watching. I know you got David Dole, who puts out some pretty good content. I like a lot of his videos. He's more of like a sock dem. At least he strikes me more of a sock dem. Maybe a little bit of a democratic socialist. But I haven't really watched his videos in quite a while. I don't know where he's changed. I don't know how much of him you follow.
Yeah, I've watched it. I'm a fan of his.
He's a pretty decent sized channel. He's a very large channel.
Yeah.
And then I know another popular one from Canada is Re-Education, is Aaron.
I haven't even heard of that.
Him, yeah. He is, I mean, well, he I forgot where in Canada he's from, but he's actually a communist, and he he does a lot of like advocacy videos, activistic videos, and kind of like strategy videos for kind of workers' movements and how you proceed past a neoliberal government into a socialist government, a communist government, and even anarchism. He goes into that as well. So he has some good content. I'm not a big fan of a lot of people of his flavor who like to prop up and idolize past so-called communist regimes and governments, but I kind of I still like a lot of the kind of tactic and theory videos and things like that, where you learn about actually leftist values. So his content's useful in that aspect, and plus he seems like a really good guy. So I don't have anything bad to say about him. But you have a couple of Canadians that are pretty big in the States.
And the thing is,
no, go ahead.
Yeah, and what I do notice about the Canadians that are making it big in the States is because they tend to cover more American news than Canadian. And it's their channel, it's their prerogative. If that's their passion, then by all means. And they still do cover Canadian stuff. But the goal with my channel, one of the reasons why I want to make it, is because I feel like we need something that's majority Canadian content, because there is so much that's happening here that people just are not aware of.
Yeah. That's probably, for your conservative side, that's probably in their favor. They probably like it that way, that your people are very uninformed. And that's really the same problem we have in America. And I know America seems like it's a constant global stream of highlight reels, but there's a lot about the American government that people don't understand. And just how the process works. And our last election proved that. There's a large, significant portion of our country that doesn't even understand how the voting process works in America.
Oh, ours is much more complicated. Ours is much more complicated.
Yes, exactly. Oh, Canada's elections. I've watched a video or two on Canadian elections and Canadian government. And I'm just, if we had that down here, oh no. If we had that down here, people just wouldn't participate. Nobody would participate.
Yeah, what we have up here is parliamentary system can be good, but you need proportional representation if you have it. What we currently have right now is ridiculous. Because again, most Canadians don't know. You're not voting for the Prime Minister. You don't vote for a person, you vote for a party. And the Prime Minister was voted to head that party from within that party. And so he's just the figurehead of the party.
Right.
And of course he would have more influence, more sway, but it was the party that selected him to represent them. And with the way the first past the post works is you don't have to get 50% of the vote to win. You have to get more than what anyone else could possibly get.
Yeah.
So
basically,
yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
So when the Liberals were in majority 2 elections ago, they got a majority with 39% of the popular vote. So now suddenly they have say over 100% of the policy.
Okay.
And and the Conservatives have been in that same situation, like to get more than 40% of the popular vote. That's really good, but then they have 100% of the power to do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's not quite as complex of a system here. So basically in Canada, you said it's first past the post, so you don't need a majority, but if you get the plurality, you basically just get to run the government. That's basically what it is. Mm-hmm. Is there anything special that happens if a party passes 50% of the popular vote? Like, because I know I'm more familiar with like the Bolivian election system, and because of the story that happened with their socialist party over the last couple of years that's been going on. Theirs is first past the post as well, but in Bolivia, if a party achieves 50% of the popular vote, it's over. Like, it's over, but if no one achieves 50%, then they have to do basically like a second ballot, and things like that. I don't know if you guys have second ballots or anything like that.
Nope.
Or you have to like redo elections.
Nope. As soon as you get the plurality, you're in.
Okay.
And so what happened? Yeah. So what happened this time was the Liberal Party, the election that they just went into, they were weaker. And the NDP was able to take some votes, but so was the Parti Québécois that was able to take some votes. So the Liberal Party itself doesn't have 50% of the seats needed to make a final say on anything. So they have to collaborate with at least one other party in order to pass the bill. And they really don't like it right now because it really starts showing them for who they are. Because you start seeing what they team up with the Conservatives to push through really shows their corporate values.
Oh yeah, our Democrats and Republicans do that constantly. Constantly.
Whereas if the Liberals are in full power or the Conservatives are in full power, they can vote against it because knowing full well it would go through. But now since they actually have to vote together and you can see what they're voting together with, it should be an eye-opener, but again, people don't pay attention to it. People didn't know that there was a pharmacare for all vote going on. There was just a few news stories about it. It doesn't get, because our media is not much better than what you have in the States. It doesn't cover the stories that the Canadians need to know. Hence, I have my channel. Because even when I did a response video right after the vote for pharmacare, just talking about it. And for the vast majority of people watching my video, that was the first time they had heard that vote was even happening. And by then it was already too late.
Yeah. Our media does a pretty good job of keeping us out of the loop on a lot of things. Now, there, of course, the biggest things that go on in America that you're going to get the most media attention on is going to be like little culture war issues that aren't really important. I mean, I guess they could be considered important on a social level, but when it comes to government effectiveness, they're insignificant. And they're literally just used as distractions to keep us unaware of the real bills that are being passed with both Democrat and Republican support. It's insane that we're in a country where supposedly the wealthiest country in the world, and we're also the only developed country that doesn't have some form of a universal healthcare system, which, of course, like you explained with Canada, it's worse than they make Canada sound to us. You've actually made me now, whenever we do stop this conversation, I'm actually going to look into the Canadian healthcare system more.
Because here's the thing about it, though, is that, again, Canadians are afraid of complaining about it. It has saved my life 5 times over, no doubt about it. And it hasn't cost me anything. The Canadian system is very, very good at triage. If they think you're going to die, you get all the care you need. Or even though our universal health care doesn't cover mental health issues, if you're in a suicidal crisis, you can still get admitted to a hospital for free to stay there under the psych ward until you're cleared to go. And I know personally, since I've had to do that, if it would have cost me $2,000, $3,000 to do that, I wouldn't have done it, because already I'm feeling like a burden when you're in those mind frames. Or the thought of having to go into debt for it. And that would mean that I wouldn't have gone in any of those times, and any one of those times, if I hadn't, it could have led to me making my final attempt. So that's the thing. Like, I do appreciate what we have, but it's not going far enough, and it's constantly being chipped away at with little bills and stuff to make it more privatized when it shouldn't be. And Canadians are just, they're so blinded by what's happening. But like last year, I had to go to Emerge, and I didn't know what was happening. just massive dizzy spells, vertigo, nausea. Went to the emergency room during COVID and was well looked after, got a CAT scan, later on got an MRI. It cost me nothing. And the MRI was basically just to prove that I didn't have a stroke, because that's what they were worried about. And so the MRI was more just to confirm that. And true, it took 6 months for me to get it. But then again, they didn't think I was dying because the CAT scan originally showed no damage. So when it's not critical, when you're waiting for like a knee replacement or a hip replacement, you can be waiting years. But if it's something that they think is life-threatening, I had an emergency surgery once where I went into the ER with pain and stuff, and luckily the inflammation of what was happening, it was my gallbladder, had settled down enough that they're like, okay, so we're safe. You're safe to go home now, but if you have pain, you come right back in, because they didn't want to do the surgery with it inflamed, because then they'd have to cut me right open. Whereas if they waited for it to calm down, they could do it laparoscopically. 3 weeks later, I had the surgery. Cost me nothing.
That's not bad. And that's actually I'm so glad that you pointed out about the wait times under you guys' healthcare, because that's actually a very popular talking point with the conservatives in America, and honestly a lot of the neoliberal Democrats that are in America against Medicare for all. That's the popular policy that the left is trying to pull for, is Medicare for all. And one of the arguments against it is, oh no, you're gonna have wait lines for these surgeries and wait lines for treatment. And the easy response to that is, well, yeah, but don't you understand that in America, because of the overall cost of our healthcare at the point of service, people are putting off and waiting to get things done until they can afford to have them done. And sometimes people just flat out don't even seek medical treatment for their symptoms that could later on accumulate into even more serious situations. That happens very commonly here. In America, we lose on average about 45 to 60,000 people a year because of lack of access to healthcare.
Do you want to hear an absolutely ridiculous anecdote about why our system is so much better?
Go ahead.
So one time I was hearing a weird popping sound in my ear, and I didn't know what it was, and I was worried, oh my God, I'm going to get an infection. So I went to a walk-in clinic, got seen by a doctor, and the doctor, I explained the symptoms, like especially when I was moving my jaw, I could hear this popping noise. There was no pain, but it must be the sign that that there's going to be an infection. And so he looks in and he just goes, do you have a cat? And I'm like, yeah. There is a cat hair resting on the eardrum. So when I moved my jaw, the hair was bouncing.
That is funny. Oh, and by the way, speaking of which, watching your intro video, I saw your two cats, and they are adorable. They are gorgeous. I wanted to point that out.
Oh, thank you. I'm very proud of my kitties. Yeah, so the doctor went back into the hall, and I could hear them laughing because, it's nice when they were so relieved, because all they had to do was send the nurse back in, and she just flushed it out. But they're happy with that sort of thing, because it's like, okay, there's nothing wrong. It's solved. You're good. So it's a good thing. And so another time I had to go back to the walk-in clinic because the most severe pain in my throat ever from swallowing or anything. And I'm like, I have strep throat or something really horrendous. And just looks down my throat and it's like, ooh, okay. I had a canker on my uvula facing out. That's it. So basically, nothing's really wrong. It's going to go away on its own. And again, these cost me nothing. So then the third time, when I had to actually go by ambulance to the doctor, well, first, it was with the gallbladder. I had gone to a walk-in clinic when I was first suffering some pain, And they immediately set me up for blood work and an ultrasound. That I got the blood work that day. But the next day is when I collapsed at work from it. But let's say I hadn't collapsed at work and I just went home. Because let's say the first 2 times I went to the doctors, it cost me money I didn't have. So then when I just get this pain in my stomach, well, the last 2 things were ridiculous, so this might be ridiculous. Whereas that third thing could have cost me my life had I decided to dismiss it or not take it seriously. So that's where a lot of the advantages come in, is that, yeah, you can go in and it could be nothing, but it could be something very severe. And we get all of that looked after. Again, the problem lies in with the holes that we do have in our system. But, you know, like I said, my system has saved my life 5 times over. That I know and I'm aware of, that had I lived in the States, I probably would not make it to my age.
Yeah. American healthcare is horrendous. I could have gotten a cat hair sitting on my eardrum and gone to the doctor, and they could have been like, hey, you have a cat hair resting on your eardrum, and they would have come and flushed it out, and they would have charged me $300 for the saline that they used to flush it out, and there would have been a doctor visit fee, an exam fee. There would have been, God forbid, you take an ambulance to go to the hospital here in America. We call it the most expensive taxi ride you'll ever take. Is an ambulance, and each time, as I've had to be ambulanced just a handful of times in my life, and each time it's $900,000 just for the ambulance ride.
It's $50 here.
Healthcare costs are so ridiculous here,
yeah.
And yeah, you guys do have it a lot better in Canada, and that's good. I'm very happy that your life was able to be saved just for your sake, because we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for that. And plus, I do respect Canada's healthcare system a lot more than I do America's, because there's just so many things that people just don't even get checked on. And because if we were able to, if we had some kind of universal healthcare and you could just get it checked at the first symptoms, we could prevent a lot of severe infections, diseases, cancers that fester, that you can, because that's what will happen with some people. It'll start with a little pain in your side, just in your gut a little bit, just a little ache. You're like, so you ignore it because you don't want to go to the doctor and spend several hundred or a couple $1,000s to get it looked at. That's fine. It'll go away. And then it goes away. A couple months later, it comes back. It's a little bit worse. You ignore it. A couple months later, it gets a little bit worse. And then finally, it gets to the point where it's so overbearing, you can't help but to get rushed to the hospital. So now you need emergency services. And guess what they find out? Boom, you have cancer. You have this. And we could have helped you months ago. At the beginning, we could have stopped it. But now it's terminal because you waited. And that's just, that's the thing. And the argument that I like to make for American healthcare is, I was like, it's not free healthcare. It's just being covered by our tax dollars. It's our tax dollars being applied back to us. And think of it this way. I was like, you like the police department? You like the fire department, don't you? You like the post office? You like public libraries? You like roads? You like those infrastructure deals? Well, guess what? They're all paid for with tax dollars, and they're free at the point of service. You need to call the fire department. You got a building on fire. Guess what? They come out. They put the fire out. It's free at the point of service. We need to make healthcare the same way. It comes out of your tax dollars. Let the government be the single payer. Do a single payer system, and then you get an injury at work or out in public, or you get a pain that you want checked out. It's free at the point of service. Yeah, you may have to wait. But what's the difference between having to wait because the line to see that specialist doctor's backed up? What's the difference between that and putting off symptoms because you can't afford the health care,
Like, that's the thing. When I went to the emergency for the gallbladder, no hesitation. Like, the doctor said that since they did my blood work again right there at the hospital, got the results back, and the doctor came back and said, it's like, since she seems to be coming out of the state that I was in, you can go home, but we'd really like you to stay around for another hour so that she can get an ultrasound to find out, because my mom was with me at the time. And we're both like, yep. And so that's the thing. I got the ultrasound. If I wasn't if I didn't start to come out of it, they also would have done the surgery right there and then. Like, that's not waiting.
But yeah, it's I just the arguments against Medicare for all and tax covered healthcare. The argument against it is just so. Honestly, it just comes from a point where you have to wonder, like, what kind of a person are you to be against that? Like, you get sick, you deserve help. You deserve help. Like, that's everybody. Is it only the wealthy who have the right to access to health care, especially specialized health care? In America, yeah, they'll treat you on the spot. Like, if you're having a heart attack or if there's something urgent that happens or whatever's going on and they need to treat you immediately, they will. But you're going to wake up in the ER with a person standing over you with a clipboard asking for your insurance information. And if you don't have insurance, you better be expecting a very hefty bill. And now you're about to live, if you're lucky, only the next few months in medical debt. But for most people, I mean, the leading causes of bankruptcy in the United States are medical bills.
Yeah, we don't even have the term medical bankruptcy here.
Yeah.
Because all the times that I went to the hospital, the cost was the ambulance and parking.
Yeah. That'd be great. That would be fantastic.
And don't get me wrong, we actually whine about that. Because, it shouldn't be $15 a day to park at the hospital. What if you have to see someone every day because you're visiting? Or, $50 for an ambulance. That's outrageous. Like, that's what we get to complain about. And the thing is, we should. Like, again, we should. It should be covered. But again, since we constantly compare ourselves to the United States, they're like, oh, you shouldn't complain. We might lose. No, we all deserve better. Part of the reason why Canadians so much wanted Bernie Sanders to get in was the health care that he was promising was better than ours. And so if he got in and was able to pass the health care that he wanted, then the smugness that a lot of Canadians like wouldn't be there anymore. So then we would have to match that. And so I want to get into like a snob race with the United States.
Let's see who can out-snark each other.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah? Yeah, well, you have all this healthcare stuff. Well, we're also going to throw in, again, no ambulance fees. Whoa, you're going to up that? We're going to up that.
We'll call it the North American Smug Derby. Yeah. It'll be. No, Bernie was my guy. Bernie was my guy in the primaries last year. I threw my weight behind him. I volunteered for the campaign. I actively, I pushed. I was trying to convert friends and family members.
You had Canadians helping you, believe it or not. There were Canadians volunteering.
We all wanted Bernie, but here's the thing though, and I'm going to try to explain this as best I can, which you honestly, you may know, you'll probably know just as much as I do, but even if Bernie had gotten the primary, which it looked like it, our first few states that came in, it looked like we were going to take it. It looked like Bernie was going to get it, and then starting at South Carolina, and then it kind of rolled out for Joe Biden, and same stuff every election. But it's what happens to the progressives. But same old song and dance. But we, even if he were to win the primary, I'm almost positive he would have beaten Donald Trump's, because he was going up for re-election. And had Bernie have been elected president, we probably still, more than likely, would not have been able to get Medicare for all. He would have been the one who would have tried the hardest. But things like that, unless he was going to be able somehow to declare an executive, a state of emergency, an executive order, universal health care, if he would have done that, it would have been fought tooth and nail in the House and the Senate, because even the rest of the Democratic Party, the establishment Democrats, did not support Medicare for all. They just wanted to revitalize the ACA, or what is known as Obamacare. Yeah. They just wanted to try to revitalize that. But if he was going to try to get the bill passed, it would not have passed.
Yeah, whereas here, when you're part of a party, it's the biggest expectation in the world that you're always going vote within party lines. And I know it's not quite as stringent like that in the States because you have Democrats constantly voting with Republicans. But here, you will have a few people every now and then to vote against what the party votes for, but there can be repercussions if you do that. So most people always vote for the party line. So if Jagmeet Singh could get in, that's the leader of the NDP party, if he had a majority, then all the things that they've been trying to push through, like the pharmacare, the wealth tax and stuff like that, it could go through. You'd get a lot of pushback from the provinces because of the way it's split up, like something like healthcare. It's a joint responsibility between federal and provincial levels. And they have to work together. And that's where some of the argument was over pharmacare, which is a stupid argument because they were planning to roll it out the exact same way that we do our regular healthcare. So there could be pushback from the provinces, and it still wouldn't be a surefire thing. They might have to water it down in areas, but the likelihood of it going through is so much stronger than what you would have in the States had Bernie got in.
Yeah. And because Bernie actually took the time at a couple of different town halls he was a part of to explain how Medicare for All would be implemented. And people were making it out like as soon as he got in, if we got Medicare for All, it would immediately go from, because currently in the United States, we do have a Medicare system, but it applies typically to people 65 and older. They can, if you're 65 and older, you can get Medicare. You can get it through the government, and that's how you can get your health insurance, basically. But what the plan was, people were making it out like he was going to just immediately take that age from 65 and just take it all the way down to cover everybody, which, why not, was my argument. If the Fed's printing money anyway, we can, plus it would save us money in the long run anyway, and it would save lives. So I was in favor, but he was actually trying to tier the system. He was going to take it from 65, and within his first year, it would go to 55. Then we go to 45. Then we go to 35. Then we go to 25. And then you can cover everybody. And that would have been better than what it's going to be now through the Biden administration. Now, I'm not saying that the Biden administration was going to be, this healthcare, whatever Biden's trying to roll out, would be just as bad as what the Republicans would have put out, because the Republicans here just don't care. They just don't care. They don't care about people. They want you to die. They want you all to die, and they don't want anyone voting. And it's actually in another thing that I was gonna try another subject to talk with you about if you would like to. I don't know if we could compare the United States and Canada as far as like voter laws. And I don't know if you guys have the same issue, because the conservatives here in the United States, the Republican Party, are really, really slimy when it comes to making voter laws, like voter ID laws and gerrymandering districts and the way they redline and try to keep people from voting. It's a pretty big issue. And in my home state here in Georgia, our governor just signed in a law within the last, I think he did it yesterday or the day before. No, I think he did it the day before yesterday.
Yeah, in Canada, it's I'm not an expert on voting laws, but if you look at a map at electoral ridings, you can see a lot of straight lines, because they do get adjusted once in a while for how many people are in a certain area, so they might have to add a new riding. But from what I know, it's a hell of a lot easier to vote up here for everyone. Yes. Like, people in prison vote.
Oh, that was a big point of contention in the Democrat primary last year.
Yeah, we have early voting, we have mail-in voting, there's voting day of, where by law, workplaces are supposed to allow you 4 hours off to go vote, which is far more than you would ever need, because I haven't waited more than 10 minutes to vote.
Yeah, no, not here.
So, yeah, so most people don't even take the time off work because they just go after work because the polling stations are open late enough. And they know that it's just like at rush, it might be a half-hour wait.
If we did that here, the Republicans would never win another election ever again. That's just how it works in America. The reason why conservatives are able to take elections is because they rely on voting suppression. And in your free time, if you want to do a little bit of research on it, I really wish that I could set up Streamlabs and have you onto my channel. That way, I could share screen and I would show you some examples of like gerrymandered voting districts that we have in the United States.
Yeah, I've seen them.
It gets insane.
Well, if you want to be really fancy, you can email or send me those images and I can add them into the video afterwards.
I can do that.
This actually kind of leads into where I kind of also wanted to go with the conversation a bit as to why you want to do this.
Of course. Yeah. Basically, we've talked about one of the largest issues in America being healthcare. Another thing that I'm very passionate about, which is what's leading my wife and I to start screaming into the wind, is Americans are very politics isn't a very important thing in most Americans' lives. It's something that I've only been taking seriously for the last several years. But it's weird because in America, people don't take voting seriously. They don't take their politics seriously. But for some reason, when you separate individual issues, they all of a sudden are very passionate about their stances on cultural and social and economic issues. And one thing because I believe you asked what inspired me to start doing this. Is that what you were wanting to know? Okay. I've noticed that in American government, as I got more and more into politics, I've noticed that the left has little to no representation. I mean, we have a little bit of representation. We have the big hitters. We have the big famous ones. We have the squad. We have a couple of local politicians across the country kind of scattered out amongst little voting areas, little representatives. At the mayoral level, we have a couple across the country. But other than that, there is no representation for leftism. There's no representation for anything remotely to the left of, basically neoliberal centrism. And one thing that got me really wanting to try to influence people's opinions was that, on the contrary to that, not just the right, not just our conservative right, but the far right. I'm talking white nationalists, fascists, neo-Nazis. These people are gaining representation in our government. They're starting to get elected. In my state, in Georgia, we, in this last election, we elected a representative. I don't know if you guys heard about her. Her name's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, I know about her because I follow politics, so, yeah. But a lot of my Canadian viewers probably don't know about her, so feel free to give oops, I scratched the mic. That's probably going to be very loud, but feel free to just kind of give a quick sum up of who she is.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is quite an interesting character. She ran as a Republican in the last election, of course, because the Democratic Party would not have let her run, but she ran as a Republican. She basically is a diehard Trump sycophant. She followed at his beck and call, kissing the ground he walks on. She is a very well-established QAnon conspiracy theorist. She has been known and been, I would say recorded, but there are screenshots and there are recordings of her actually calling a false flag conspiracy theory to one of our very most tragic school shootings that happened in recent history. Because I'm sure most of your viewers are Canadian, if not pretty much all of them, right? Because So in America, we kind of have a reputation for that. It happens a lot. So she has been known to blow out conspiracy, kind of dismissing the severity of those school shootings. She was a QAnon conspiracy theorist, anti-mask, anti-vax, and she has been caught in screenshots and on message boards actually promoting basically common neo-Nazi talking points about basically the Jewish question conspiracy theory. She's a very
the Jewish space laser.
The Jewish space laser, yeah. She's a character. She followed around one of the surviving students at one of the famous high school shootings that happened in the last several years, and she basically, the kid was walking through their town, and she approached him and started harassing him, claiming that he was just a false actor, and basically dismissing everything that happened at his school. And that video is out there on YouTube if anyone wants to look it up. But no, she is now a representative.
Actually, I might be able to find the link to that, and I can put it in the description box below.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of wacky videos of her out there on the internet. But no, I am a proud resident of this state that she helps represent. But no, it got me really passionate about wanting to get in front of a camera and put my views out there, because although I can get a little nervous before going on camera at times, I'm fairly capable of formulating thoughts and good arguments against things, and I try to my goal is to try to kind of put things into more of like a layman term, so that kind of your average American could understand it, because a lot of Americans, they let socio and economic and political issues just fly right over their head, and they don't want to be involved in the political system, yet their stances are so hardline, and it's America's a nation of indoctrination. Like we from a young age, we're taught this false version of history, and a lot of Americans just don't understand that we're not the world heroes that we think we are. You know, America's got quite a few skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the same here with that. You know, the image that I have of Canada when I was a child, like Canada was basically my hero in a way. Like I was just so proud of being Canadian, but then as you grow up and you start learning the atrocious things we have done that we're still doing, again, that's part of the reason that drove me to do my channel. Is like Justin Trudeau, the rest, like a lot of people look up to him like he's this great figure. He's selling weapons to the Saudis right now that are going to the war in Yemen. We're part of that. Yeah. All the overseas conflicts you guys have had, we've been involved with.
Yep. Oh no, you guys are pretty much in lockstep with the U.S. military when it comes to those conquests. Yeah, I've always found it hilarious that Americans would support our past couple of presidents selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, the country who literally, I believe it was, 15 of the 19 hijackers on September 11th were Saudis. They were Saudis. And we are now helping arm them so they can commit a genocide in Yemen. Mm-hmm. They're literally committing a genocide. And we're helping. Like, it's atrocious. And our foreign policy is just, it's atrocious.
Yeah, our foreign policy is yours. That's it.
Yeah, we throw so much money, and that's another thing that inspired me to get on camera, is we throw so much money at our military and at weapons spending and defense spending. Like the United States, I mean, it's a really common saying and it's a meme, but in the United States, we spend more on our defense than the next 10 or 11 countries combined. Most of them are allies. Most of them aren't even our enemies. And why are we spending so much money on the military? We don't need to. Why do we have almost like the better side of 1,000 military bases across the planet? Why are we why are we escalating with countries in the Middle East that we have no business getting involved in? We have our own problems. Like, and another thing to me that I'm also very passionate about, which I hope we can also cover, if you'd like, is what we talked about on Twitter is socialism as just a concept. The more that I read in my adult life and researched into leftism, which, of course, you know, I started like most Americans. You kind of start, being born and raised in Georgia, I came from a very diehard conservative family. And as I got older and more educated, I went to college for a little bit, and I started broadening my horizons. You become a liberal, and then while you're a liberal, you kind of start learning about socialized medicine and socialized education. And hey, this could be free. This could be blah, blah, blah. We are free at the point of service, at least. This could be covered. We can afford this. Why are we spending so much money on the military? And so you go and you become a SOCDEM, and you get into that, and you start learning a little bit about socialism and full-on leftism. And I started learning about how everything that I was taught in school and as a kid about socialism and just leftism in general was a complete lie. It was all literally just McCarthy smearing indoctrination it's basically spawned from the Cold War with the Soviet Union. And they're still teaching the same talking points to kids now and to Americans now. And it's not, it's the older I got, the more I started learning and realizing and coming to the conclusion of, I'm a worker. Workers deserve more than what we're getting. We do need increased wages. We do need increased protections for workers. It's not the wealthy. And other leftists would say the bourgeois. It's not the bourgeois who are generating this wealth. It's the workers. So I started caring more about workers' rights. Started caring more about learning about how the means of production have been slowly whisked away from the American worker, and how just several decades ago unions were pretty powerful here in America, and we had rights. Everyone had paid vacation. Everyone had a 40-hour work week, and that's it. You could work one job and you could support an entire family. And the fact that it's just been chipped away at little by little by little, while people are being indoctrinated to look at socialism like it's the devil incarnate. You get more vocal about it, and you start wanting to actually influence other people, and you start wanting to change people's opinions. And that's one thing I hope to do on my channel. Actually, I love debating people. So I think one thing that I'm going to do is bring conservatives on, partisan Republicans. I'll even bring on white nationalists if I can get in touch with them, and I just want to debate people. I'll even bring on other leftists, because, you know, the left, and you know this too.
Lots of infighting in the left.
There's lots of info. Oh, yeah. The left can't coalesce around anything. Like, we can't have anything nice.
No.
We can't have anything nice. Oh, you're a socialist now, but 10 years ago, you called someone with a mental disorder an idiot. Yeah. Guess what? You're not coming online ever again, and Twitter will not allow you back. This is what's going to happen. That's what they do to you.
Yeah, we've been having some fights on Twitter right now between, you know, people who aren't going left enough. Like, the NDP is the more progressive of our parties, but they still have a long way to go.
Right.
And so there is some push from within. There's some push from establishment NDPers. There's, you know, the older people saying what you guys want is fine, but there's a process. Like, you can't just snap your fingers and these things magically start. And so you can still fight for what you want, but it has to go in a certain way.
Yeah.
Versus the people who just want it now and think you can snap your fingers. And like, my biggest complaint with the NDP is that they don't go far enough with their policies. It's actually in one of my videos recently, because they'll do like, oh yeah, we'll cancel all student debt. Oh, well, maybe not. We'll do 20,000 student debt 5 years from now, if you're making under 60,000.
Right.
And again, it's so frustrating because they tend to water down their policies, especially close to an election, because they want to try to pull from the center where it's like, no, 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 you don't understand. The center is polling from the left because Trudeau comes across as a progressive. He has that image. So the NDP has to go bolder. They have to go harder. They have to show people, no, we're the party that will actually do it as well. Because the Liberals will make progressive promises they never keep.
Yeah.
And they have to go bigger and bolder if they're going to get the attention. And they just, it's hard to get excited about the party when they're not going far enough.
It's the exact same problem here. Because Democrats will run on progressive policies. Mm-hmm. They will run. There was a time when Kamala Harris, when our VP, when she was in the primary running as a presidential candidate, there was a time when she favored a $50 minimum wage. She favored some form of universal health care, child care. She was talking about, social justice and racial inequality and fixing the justice system and a lot of problems that are inherent in our justice system and the inherent and systemic racism that exists within our justice system. She was all about preaching about that. And then the primaries ended and she became the VP candidate, and all of a sudden they stopped talking about it. Yeah. Democrats will run and then they stop talking about it. We recently had a Democrat out of where was she from? Arizona, I believe Arizona. Why am I blanking on her name? Okay, anyway, who she gained her reputation as a progressive, and she got elected. She was kind of like your young hipster, workers' rights, very, very like left-wing seeming. She got elected, and she just went onto the House floor a couple of weeks back and voted no. Sinema? Yes, Kirsten Sinema. And she went onto the House floor a couple of weeks ago and she did the little, you saw the little bit vote on the $15 minimum wage. And it does two really key things to the American voter and to American politics. First thing it does to the American voter is it disincentivizes people from ever voting Democrat again. In my state, we had a Senate runoff election between our two Senate seats because the marginal difference between the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidates in both elections was too close to call. So they did a runoff election at the beginning of this year, and we rallied to get the Democrats elected because they said, hey, you elect us, you guys are going to get $2,000 stimulus checks. You elect us, we're going to try to get a $15 minimum wage. You elect us, and they started saying all these things. Well, guess what? We elected them. Our red state, Georgia is a famously red state, a conservative state, went blue for those two senators. We're now technically, well, okay, we're Blorgia. We're still very much red, but we, as representatives go, we are a blue state, and we elected them. And then it immediately gets backed off. No $2,000 checks, it became $1,400. And they said, well, you've already gotten a $600 check a little while back, so we're going to make the total $2,000. And then when you bring up, well, the $600 checks were from the Trump administration. Are you saying that you're just going to tack on to what Trump did instead of giving us the $2,000 you said you were? So what it's doing is it's going to disincentivize the voters to vote. Sorry, I'm banging on the table. It's going to disincentivize voters to vote for the Democrats here in America because they're just going to keep breaking their promises. And the second thing that it's going to do, it's going to guarantee more Republican victories in the midterms in 2022, because the Republicans, they don't care about anybody. They don't care about anybody. They're basically to hell with all of you, but they still, but then they govern like it. Like, you at least know what you're getting into with the Republican Party. Yeah. You know that they're going to have terrible policy and terrible ideas because that's just who they are, but they don't try to broadcast like there's something better, like the Democrats do. So that's kind of it's kind of the issue that Americans are facing, but it's definitely very similar to what you say that happening in Canada. So you guys have, what did you say, it was the NDP?
The NDP, we also have a Green Party here.
Oh, you have a Green Party. Okay.
They have
We had
two
an
seats.
attempt at a Green Party in America.
They have 2 seats federally.
Okay. Is there like a centrist kind of neoliberal party in Canada? Or is it pretty much
liberals?
They're just called
Liberals are, yeah, the Liberal Party, they've moved just a little bit right of center. Because again, they're in with the corporations, the wealthy. As they say, the wealthy vote conservative, the ultra wealthy vote liberal.
Yeah.
And then our conservative party is also starting to edge more and more right wing all the time. I actually just did my last video was a breakdown of policies from all 3 of those parties, and it gives a good demonstration of what's happening right now.
And as far as the indigenous population there, I've heard a couple of stories come out of there in recent times about apparently they're facing a lot of the indigenous people there are facing a lot of discrimination lately. Yeah,
when I say we're more racist, it's towards the indigenous community by far. Here's a very startling stat. So in the United States, I know 30% of the prison population is Black people, yet they only represent about 15% of your overall population.
Yeah.
In Canada, 30% of the males and over 40% of females in our incarceration system are Indigenous. They represent 5% of our population.
Yeah.
A lot of reservations don't have clean drinking water and haven't for decades, which the federal government should be doing something about, but they don't. They're pulled over by the police more. The way the RCMP in particular has treated them has been horrendous. Like, if I tend to be honest, especially on my channel, and say that the genocide against them has never stopped.
Yeah.
Because it's still, the policies that the government has in place, it's so discriminatory. Like, even in our foster care system, over half of the children are Indigenous. And they're on toxic land, toxic water. Treaties are constantly being broken with them. You know, like the federal government, the Liberal government spent billions of dollars on a pipeline to go through their land. And just everything that has happened to them is horrendous. Like, I don't know if you guys had residential schools the way we did.
What do you mean by residential schools?
So basically, since Canada started, they would rip the children away from their Indigenous families and put them into schools that tended to be very religious, Catholic religious, and stripped of their culture, but they were also beaten, sexually assaulted, and the schools were purposely underfunded. These schools had graveyards because it was kind of expected that some of the children wouldn't survive. The last one of these residential schools was shut down in the 90s.
Oh.
Yeah. When I was a child.
So that's recent. Like, that's a very, very recent thing.
When I was a child, there were still children, Indigenous children, being ripped away from their families. And they weren't allowed to speak their own language. They weren't allowed to dress in traditional clothing. And all the abuse that they endured during that time, it's heartbreaking. And again, we're not taught about it. I didn't even really know a lot about what had happened to them until I was an adult. It wasn't taught in our schools.
Yeah.
And again, that's part of the reason why I'm doing this channel, is to bring awareness to this, because our relationship with them, how, like, I hesitate to say that they're a part of Canada, like the federal lands, because really Canada is in their land.
It's definitely that way. Same way here.
Yeah. And it's just the horror that we've done to them, and that still continues to happen to them, because they don't get even the same health care that we get, because a lot of our health care is distributed through the province, but since it's federal land that they live on. They have federal regulations to go by. So Indigenous people have died with the two governments, the federal and provincial, arguing over who's going to pay for the bills. And when it comes to Black people in Canada, here's the thing. There is slavery in Canada. People don't talk about that. They do not talk about that. And part of the reason why is because the British Empire abolished slavery in the colonies in 1833, whereas we signed the British North American Act in 1867. And that's what made Canada Canada. So you can technically say, yeah, there was no slavery in Canada. But
yeah, those little you love those little technicalities, don't you? Yeah,
technicality
those are great.
And even by 1833, a lot of slavery had already been banned in Canada through case law. So that's why there was still an underground railroad coming up to Canada. But what happened to them once they got here? I don't know. I seriously doubt their lives were great. We've had Black communities of people that have suffered greatly, activists that we've never heard about. And this is part of my frustration with this whole goddamn cancel culture issues about these stupid little things when the Canadian government has literally canceled cultures. Because we don't know the history. I don't know the history. It's not being taught. And so I'm hoping with my channel to also shine a light on some of these stories.
Yeah.
To let people know, yes, there was slavery in Canada. There's no talk of reparations. There are descendants of these people here in Canada. It's not talked about. Where are their supports? Where's their assistance to get the up to the living standards of the average settler?
Yeah.
We don't even have that conversation. We don't even talk about the slavery that happened in Canada.
Yeah. We talk about our history of slavery in America, and we teach them in schools, but it's very, 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 very watered down. It does not go into the detail that it probably should, and just the version of it that we get taught in America, it's more of a how triumphant America was in overcoming slavery, and when the truth is, we had to fight a whole war over it. We had to fight an entire civil war over it. And then even after that, we had, of course, most famously for American history, we have the Jim Crow era that happened after that. We have, still Jim Crow is partly still going on in America now. There is still, I'm 100% convinced there's still a portion of our Republican electorate that if they could get away with it, and not be criticized too hard for it, they would try to reinstitute literal slavery if they could.
You kind of already have it in your incarceration system.
Oh yeah, we do. Oh, definitely. We have the highest incarceration rate per capita.
Yeah,
in the world.
And there's a lot of slave labor happening in those.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, they'll make cents per day if they get paid at all. And it's funny you mentioned, because you called them for the Indigenous people, you called them residential schools. Yeah, we called them for what we did to the Native Americans. We called them boarding schools. So we had Native American boarding schools where we would try to uneducate them of their culture. And the crazy thing about it with Indigenous culture, and that's another thing that I love about finally when I got to get out of high school and I finally went to college and I started kind of expanding my horizons, is being exposed to so many other cultures that are just different from how you were raised. They're beautiful. They're awesome. It's great to learn about, and these people deserve to have their voices heard. We in America, we treat our Native Americans our Indigenous people so terribly. We've done everything in our power to just erase their culture, but then the South turns around and names half their counties and cities after Native names. And it's almost like that's a big spit in the face, you know what I mean? And Black people are still technically second-rate citizens in a lot of places in the United States. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about. They gerrymander districts to suppress the African-American vote because they know that, and it's not just for African-American people, they also know that most of our country most of our population is liberal-leaning. Mm-hmm. They will probably vote Democrat. Yeah. And the Republicans don't want that to happen. So if you can suppress the vote, you have a better chance of winning.
Yeah, it's, when my eyes were opened up to everything that this country has done, is doing, I know it's uncomfortable, but I don't want to go back to not knowing. I want my country to be held accountable. Yeah. I want justice because I have benefited from this settler culture and I'm still benefiting from it. And I have a hard time. I can never be at peace with a system that treats some people so much better than others. And they just deserve so much more than what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I wish I could be a better voice for them. I wish I knew what to say. I wish I could, but I'm just one little voice. I don't have any power to change anything. I don't know how, a lot of the time I don't even know the best way to support what they want. Yeah. And I do try when I can get into conversations to ask a bit more about it, but I'm also in a situation where the only thing I can do is my channel because I have no finances. I'm broke. I have no political power. So this is just something that I'm trying to do because I want Canada to be the country I thought it was when I was a child. Yeah. And to be the country that a lot of people seem to think we are, that we're not.
Another thing that I find very frustrating, because both of our countries are in a very, very, very similar situation when it comes to especially race relations. One thing that I've noticed is that there are people that no matter how much data you show them, how much evidence you show them, how many studies you show them, that yes, this is real and it is still happening and it needs to stop. It's what you said. The country needs to be held accountable. The system itself has to be held accountable. We have to change this and fix it and learn from it so that we can become truly the land of the free. Mm-hmm. Like how can you sit here and call us the land of the free when we have so many people in prison? Mm-hmm. And especially for the things that we imprison people for in America. Minor drug offenses, non-violent drug offenses, there are so many people, hundreds of thousands of people across the country that are in prison for that very thing. Non-violent. They never hurt anybody. They just had drugs. Yeah. America, and it seems like from the way you say it, Canada, it's people would rather throw the police at a problem that a social worker really could solve, or a therapist or a psychiatrist.
No, we have a BLM movement up here as well. Mm-hmm. The police, the United States has the most police shootings, but out of the wealthy countries, we're second. Yeah. And most of the people that are shot are Indigenous, people of color, and most of them are suffering from a mental health crisis. The police should have never been called to them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It was actually really cool that it came out of the United States in Colorado. I believe it was Denver. Colorado. I may be wrong about the city. I might look it up in a minute. They have been experimenting over the last 6 months or so with, they have have a program where instead of when they get calls to like domestic disturbances, mental health crises, where instead of sending out the police, they send out like a paramedic and a social worker, or a paramedic and a counselor, or a paramedic and someone. And in these last 6 months, 6 to 8 months that they've been trying it, they have literally had to call the police for backup to those, to the medic and the social worker or the counselor. They've had to call the police for backup 0 times. The solution, it gets resolved without the police having to be involved.
Yeah.
Because in America, when the police get involved, people die.
Yeah.
People die. And that's the goal, isn't it? We're trying to preserve life. We're trying to preserve everyone's freedom. What bigger freedom do you have than the freedom to live?
Yeah.
But some people, you can't throw the police at every single problem. And here in America too, we throw not just, and of course this goes along racial lines as well, but we will throw the police at our homeless population, who did absolutely nothing, just for existing. They'll get the police thrown at them.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
no.
and that's another thing, like the common slogan that we have, which I kind of, in my opinion, I think that the slogan was misused by a lot of people acting in bad faith, but the slogan was defund the police. And I do stand by that. But a lot of people think that means abolish the police. We're saying abolish the police. We're just saying we need to reallocate our resources away from just calling the police on every little issue we have. Things that other professionals could handle way better. We have trained professionals and plenty of them. I mean, what would it do? It would lower the rate of police violence, and we're literally creating jobs. That's literally what you would be doing. You're giving jobs to professionals in these departments who can help way better and way more skillfully than a police officer who just went to cadet school for like 12 weeks and they got a badge and a gun, you know?
Yeah, like I think about it up here too, and when I've been in a mental health crisis, I can't even begin to imagine how I would have responded had somebody called the cops on me. Like, it's just, to be in the state of mind that I am during these, then to have that at me as well, that would be so traumatizing on top of what I was already going through.
Yeah.
And again, they end up shooting a lot of them.
Yeah.
In these situations.
People die all the time from it, and it could be prevented. It's very upsetting that you have to live in a place where you're not even in control of what you do and say sometimes because of a mental health episode, knowing that you literally being out of control of a situation could lead to your death or your imprisonment, and you not having any control over the situation. And it's because of a private prison industry. It incentivizes us to just lock people up, lock them away, ignore the problem, sweep it under the rug. We'll give immunity to a lot of the law enforcement officials who operate. They can just do what they want. So now you end up with a jackbooted gang of authoritarians who go out thinking that they are the law. It's literally like it's in a lot of places in the United States, it's like you live in a Western movie. It's like this isn't like a shoot 'em up text. Like, this isn't a thing where you can just come in and pow, 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 and have it out and it's over with. That's not how that works. That's not how police works. That's not how the police are supposed to function. The police are literally supposed to be your taxi cab ride from where a crime was committed to the justice system so that you can be tried for your crimes. That's what the police's job is.
Yeah,
Their job is not to play judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, no, we have again, I don't think it's as bad as in the States, but we definitely have our issues with the policing system up here and how they treat Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It's I'm not afraid of the police when I'm not in a mental health crisis. And that's a privilege.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We're not, no one is saying that because, no one is saying that because you're white, you're automatically, or because you live in a certain area, or because of whatever, these other socioeconomic circumstances, we're not saying that that automatically makes you a fully privileged person. We're just saying, because there are plenty of white people who are non-LGBT, uh, uh, who are poor, who don't have clean water, who live in very, very tough situations. All that we're saying is your race, your ethnicity, your background, or your sexual orientation does not play a factor into your economic circumstances like it does for other people.
Well, something I am going to be making a video on in the not too distant future is the fact that, of course, I don't understand where all my privilege lies, because you can't see the negative. You can't see where you don't have it necessarily unless it's pointed out to you. But one area I definitely know where I have it is with the mental health, because as a white woman, I'm taken far more seriously than pretty much every other group of people if I say I'm in crisis or I feel like harming myself. And even then, it's only 75% of the time, roughly. Like, it's not even all the time. Oh, yeah. But like, even when it comes to men, a white woman will be taken more seriously, will probably get better treatment, better health. But then if you're a person of color, if you're indigenous, if you are, let's just say, presenting as queer, because it's like, I'm non-binary and I will date people of all genders, but I don't necessarily present that way. So I present as a cis heterosexual woman. So, you know, whenever you add any other factor to it, the level of care you receive or the level of how much people actually take you seriously when it comes to mental health starts to decrease.
Yes. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So I can say I am probably alive because of it.
Yeah.
Because I have been able to get treatment when I've needed it.
Yeah. Not necessarily, and because so basically what you're saying is, because if you were, I'm sure you present how this is how you wish to present yourself as a non-binary person. Okay. So basically what you're saying is, had you been a non-binary person who may present differently, the circumstances would be a lot different, even in Canada, for you. If that situation, you are lucky that your preferred presentation is more of a kind of a cis-normative, heteronormative kind of style. I know, I totally understand that. And it's actually funny because there are studies that America has put out, and this is more of a racial thing, but as far as with healthcare, there have actually been studies done where we actually discovered that medical professionals, when Black people, especially Black women, would be going to the hospital to receive medical care, they were actually, like, by and large, given lower doses of pain medication, given less effective treatments. And it actually stems back from the Jim Crow era and before, when it was a commonly held belief in the medical field that a Black person could not feel pain as much. It was kind of a thing that was, I don't know how they came to the conclusion back then, but I mean, it's part of the systemic racism that exists here in America. And from what it sounds like, you guys have it in Canada too, but it's just, it's crazy how just one little thing, and you would think that if you really wanted to be a place of true freedom, you would treat every human being equally. Like I've never understood how people who claim to support freedom and liberty and bodily autonomy are so, they treat people who aren't them so differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it baffles me. And of course, I'm lucky to be in the position I'm in. I'm just a cisgendered white dude. I'm pretty much your stereotypical. No, he's good. I'm one of those. I mean, the only thing I really got going against me is I have a lot of tattoos,
Mm-hmm.
and down here in the South, you kind of get looks every now and then, but not nearly as much as like other people would get.
I'm far more queer than people think I am if they just meet me, because I can date people of any gender. I'm open to it. I have my preference is for men. That's where my sexual attraction goes to, but I'm open to, if I hit it off with somebody else from a different gender, then by all means, why would I rule that out? But I'm also polyamorous.
Nice.
And yeah, and recently I've come to realize, thanks to Twitter, oddly enough, it's like, actually, I am non-binary. And when I think back to my life, my history, my childhood, it was all there. It just never really connected the two, because since I am biologically a woman and I present as a woman, I just kind of, oh yeah, I'm a woman. But then a lot of the issues, social issues I've had in my life is when people expect me to react like a woman.
I feel, although I can't directly sympathize, I definitely can empathize. Because if I was in that situation, I'm sure, especially being here in the South, I would definitely be facing some things that a lot of my friends have to go through all the time. And I don't know. I feel like to me, it's simple, because to me, it's all about respect. It's all about respecting and being courteous to people. You know, I look at someone wanting to be referred to by a certain pronoun, or wanting to present as whatever gender, whether male, female, or somewhere in between, wanting to do that. I view that as no different than someone who was born with the name William wanting to be called Bill or Billy. You know, there are plenty of people like that. You know, let's say my name's David. If I preferred Dave and I was kind of like put off by the name David, I'd be like, hey, you know, could you just call me Dave? You know, I don't view it any differently than that. It's all about just being respectful to people, because there are so many people that just don't understand that for a lot of people, coming out with that kind of identity, it's a very life altering moment for those people. It is something, it will change everything about you, and the least that you can do is just not make that process any more difficult on the person. You know, you don't. It's just.
No, I know how incredibly lucky I am, because I can say, well, I never had to come out of the closet because I was never in it. Right. And I understand how incredibly lucky I am with that.
Yeah.
But because I have so many friends who their experiences were just so not mine.
Yeah. I
just to give you a little, we are almost quarter after 2 hours at this.
Yeah.
So we should probably wrap up in about 15 minutes or so.
Sure.
Because this alone, it's going to take a day.
I'm sorry. I hope I was a worthy guest on.
Oh yeah.
On your channel.
Well, you're my first actual guest.
Oh wow.
I've been on another show, but this is the first time I've had somebody kind of come on to my branding of Left of the Box, and it's your debut, so it's a lot of popping cherries today.
Yeah, we're popping cherries left and right over here. No, we're popping cherries left. That's what we're doing. We're popping cherries left.
Yeah.
Any final subjects that you want to hit up with me? I'll hit me up with anything. I'll talk anything.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of flattered you reached out to me on Twitter. Had you seen any of my stuff before that, or just, oh, here's a random request?
I
Why
didn't.
not?
I saw it and I was like, maybe this is my chance to finally grow a spine and put myself on camera. Maybe this is my opportunity to do it. Maybe I can just muster up some courage.
Make it or break it on Left of the Box. Woo!
I was like, never. Well, that's kind of my thing. Is because I've put out on other social media platforms to friends, and I've actually worked it out with personal friends who have said, "Hey, when you get your channel going, I'd love to come debate you." Because I have friends all over the political spectrum. I have friends all over the identity spectrum, and so they would want to come on. And because since I love debating so much, some of them do too. So I've wanted to have them on for discussions, and just people would just never get back to me. I would plan something, and then it would just kind of go cold. And then I planned something, and it would just kind of go cold. And so it made me put the channel on hold. So I was in Twitter, and I opened it up, and your post came up there, and I went, I'm off today. I just got to meet with my union rep here in a little bit. But if they're game to talk, I was like, hey, you got to start somewhere. And this is, and I was like, I've been looking for I was just looking for a reason to get out there, and this was a reason. I was like, hey, there's a Canadian leftist who I think we could have a very positive discussion. I was like, just it ended up, I don't know about you, I had lots of fun.
Oh yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Oh yeah.
No, it's one of the things, like, as soon as you asked, I had to be like, oh yeah, I've publicly said that I want to have people on my show, and now somebody has randomly offered, and I have no clue who this person is. Yeah, so I had to quickly go to your Twitter account and be like, okay, yeah, his tweets are okay, yeah, right. They're good.
Well, it's like I said in my bio. Some of my takes are good, others are bad. I'm still learning. I've been. It's been about the last 2 years, 3 years. I've been drifting further and further left. I was kind of stuck as a SOP dem for a very, very long time. I've been a Bernie bro since before the 2016 election when he was going up against Hillary Clinton, and I was very behind him ever since he started running for president. That's how I actually started learning about leftism, and then I started. It got recommended to me that I read into people like Noam Chomsky, into people like Richard Wolff, and then from there you talk to enough people on the internet and talk to enough leftists, and they're just like, "Hey, have you read Marx? Have you read Lenin? Have you read blah?" And I'm like, "Okay, well." So you start opening your mind up to theory and workers' movements and the history of it all, and you got to kind of look at it from every side, and then you kind of start building a political personality out of it. And I'm not as far left as some, but I'm way further left than others. So
as I say, I'm damn near communist. So.
Well, I'm further left than that, but I guess if I could. I use the term libertarian socialist because it's palatable to people who aren't on the left. They can be like, oh, okay, well, I can kind of get a general idea of what you mean. Okay, cool. But to other people on the left, if I had my full kind of, I guess what you would call it, a utopian mentality, I would be considered. I would consider myself more what would be known as an anarcho-syndicalist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, for me, it's like labels mean almost nothing because depending on who's using them. And so that's why I'll say damn near communist. But would I label myself as such? Like, I might actually fit the box of that. I might just be a socialist. But as a very baseline, basically what I feel like is everything a person needs to survive and thrive within society should be taken care of by the government.
Yes.
That is the bare minimum.
Yep. If we're going to pay taxes, we need our taxes to help pay for our needs. And I'm not opposed to extending that to fully decommodifying a lot of things about like Why is it that I don't know how Canada is, of course, because I'm American and we're stupid. But I don't know how Canada is, but here yeah, I know, yeah, no, I wear that badge with pride. No, in America, why is it that we waste and we throw away 40% of food that we produce, yet we still have hungry people?
Yeah.
It never made sense to me. And so now that's why lately I've been getting more into researching the actual theory of decommodifying things like food, shelter, water. Why is water part of why were futures in water beginning to be sold on the stock market in America last year? They started selling futures in water in our stock market. Why? That'd be like selling oxygen.
Yeah. No, it's who knows someday. No, we should be able to survive and thrive. And the way I see it is, how many people are missing out on, there's artists, there's writers, there's scientists out there, all of amazing minds and beauty that could be added to this world if people are just allowed to live to their full potential. And not to mention just the quality of life. Like, we've lost the sense of community, of how to talk to one another, of a sense of belonging, and just generally speaking, being happy. Because people, they're so numb, and they're like, well, what we have is good enough. But why is it such a crime to think, why can't we be happy? Feel like we're giving back, feel like we're contributing, feeling like you get to express and explore who you are. And, it's the human relationships, the human connections. We're getting more depressed as a society because we're getting more online, and that really detaches people, even though it also means I get to meet lovely people like you.
Oh, thank you. you are far more lovely than I promise. But no, you're absolutely right. I cherish conversations like this, and I agree. I think that we have lost a sense of community, but we live in two countries where the common narrative is you work yourself to death or you don't deserve to live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a phrase, that's a meme I've seen so many times over, and throughout people in the States. And why does it have to be like that?
Yeah.
We have the resources, we have the means to produce these things. Why do you have to go into a borderline, why do you have to go into borderline wage slavery, get 2 and 3 jobs to just be able to barely survive? Why?
Why are people afraid to be happy?
Exactly.
Why are people afraid to fight for it?
Yeah. Hey, you get an off day? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Because, for me personally, if I could spend my time writing, working on my art, I'm starting to actually enjoy all this YouTubing things. If I could live a life on this, I'd be fine. I'd be so fine. But, since I live off a disability, I'm in a financial crunch. The housing market here is also insane. And right now I'm only barely scraping by because I've been in this apartment for over 10 years. But this building has been bought by a developer, and I know at any moment we're going to get a notice saying we have to move. When that happens, my entire disability check will not cover rent for a tiny 1-bedroom anywhere in this region. So then what happens to me then? And so just that constant stress and worry detracts from me being able to put myself more fully into this, because one thing I would love to do is just get out more videos. But sometimes my mental health is just not happening.
And that's not your fault. That's not your fault.
Yeah. And I wonder, who could I have been had I had the supports? And it makes me afraid and worried for other people, because part of me feels like it's too late for me, that this is kind of the path my life is on, that I'm getting too old and all that sort of stuff. And I don't want other people to go through this. I want other people to live a life, to be able to express themselves, to be free with who they are. why would I not want that for other people? Because I didn't get it. The fact that I didn't get it makes me want other people to have it more.
Exactly. I'm the exact same way. I hate I hate the mentality of, well, I didn't get my college tuition paid off. I had to pay my student loans off. Where you get bit like it's like, what's your end game, dude? What's your fucking end game? Like, what's your point? So we should just never improve? Like you just want to stagnate? And then you're going to turn around in the next breath and complain and bitch and moan about how rough your life is. Well, let's make it better. And even if it doesn't get better for our generations, we can make it better on the kids that are coming up now, because guess what? By the time they're middle-aged, climate change is going to have us to a point to where we're about to see a lot of drastic change in a very short amount of time. Well, okay.
It's already happening.
Historically speaking, it's a very brief amount of time, but I'm talking over the next several decades. But still, like the kids who are coming into the world now are going to have to deal with it directly. Like, I mean, I'm in my low 30s, so I'll probably end up seeing effects anyway. Like we're on the precipice of some very serious global change, and what side do you want to be on when it hits the fan? Do you want to be? I shook my camera and I noticed. I'm really sorry. What side do you want to come out on top? Mm-hmm. Do you want the side of equality, freedom, humanitarianism? Hey, we can help each other through this. It's going to be okay. Don't worry, you can stay here. Don't worry, you can stay with us. We'll help you be as safe as you can. Or do you want to come out on the side of full collapse of society and collapse of our civilization, to where everyone's having to fight over the barest little scraps? Like, we can fix this. And that's one reason, like, people like us, although your channel, I mean, I noticed you have over 300 subscribers, which is nothing to scoff at. That's good.
Part of me agrees with you, part of me doesn't. So.
I know. We all watch the big lefties and we're like, oh, I wish I had that many subscribers. Oh no, I'll just see these. Pardon my language, but I'll see all these just dumb fucks get on Twitter with just the worst. Like, it's not even like they're real lefties, or even not even a political thing. It'll just be like, it's literally like pseudo-intellectualism comes onto Twitter, and they immediately just pow, and they just blow off, and they blow off, they blow up, and it's just okay. Like, I can do that. I would rather not. I'd rather have some substance and make some arguments and stand for something. Like on YouTube, I'll look at the whole time I've been trying to set the channel up. I would watch a big YouTuber with what I would consider now, not all my takes are smart, but what I would consider a dumb take, and I'll go, I can do that. I want to make subscribers. I can do that.
Get ready for the frustration of, it doesn't necessarily matter the quality of your content. It matters if enough of the right people see it.
Right.
And that is the biggest frustration, that you can put so much heart and soul and hard work into this. It's not necessarily going to pay off. Not that that's an encouragement, but I know I'm feeling it. I am definitely feeling it at times, because, I see people who just get so many subscribers to their channel overnight, and I feel like I am working for each and every single one. And then there's little ways that you can find out to boost your channel through other progressive networks that are willing to, they do 30-second ads or something for the smaller channels trying to get noticed. And that's the only way I even got my own boost, where I got like 100 people in 1 week, was because of the SERPs. I could send in a commercial to them, a 30-second clip, and they play it at the end of one of their videos.
That's awesome.
And
that's something that
got me like 100 people. So
yeah, that's something I would definitely want to do for if I ever, if my, the goal is for my wife to have a private channel, me have a private channel, and us do Screaming into the Wind together, or at least like she'll do a little bit of it, I'll do a little bit of it. But that's kind of the goal. And if we've both even said, like, if we ever get any kind of a following, whether it be on Screaming into
I'm
the Wind,
definitely going. I kind of feel like I'm doing it right now.
Huh?
I kind of feel like I'm doing it right now because
you are
no
because your 300 people may see this and be like, wow, country boy knows his socialism. And
well,
they'll be
I'm
like,
hoping
hey,
I'm hoping you tweet this out so that your over 700 Twitter followers, maybe a lot of Americans would be like, hey, maybe we should start paying a little bit more attention to what's happening in Canada because it's all the same issues. It's all the same fight.
Yeah. You think the Canadian American governments aren't in lockstep with each other constantly? Oh no.
So when I talk about issues, when I talk about issues, it's the same issues. And so my perspective on how to deal with them or my take on them, it's the same because I do have a couple videos that's like one I call how to talk to a Trump supporter, but I always relate it back to Canada because we have Trump supporters here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
yeah, we have Trump supporters up here.
If there's anything we can export down here, it's hate.
Yeah. And but we also have other people that are maybe kind of stuck in that way of thinking. Like another one of my first longer videos I did was the domestic abuse of the American population. And again, I turn it around to, we see it happening in the States, and meanwhile, we're so taken with what's happening there, we're not paying attention to the fact that it's happening here too. Yeah. And it's just a breakdown of that. But generally speaking, it will be majority content, Canadian content. But the issues, they're all the same. They're all the same. And so if somebody wants, a female presenting non-binary woman to talk about issues, who I would like to think has a good sense of humor.
No, because I'm hoping you seem like you're fairly comfortable in front of the camera. Yeah.
It took a while. I do stress being in front of a soulless camera. I'm much better interacting with somebody.
Right.
But I do, I try to use my humor to have people pay attention a little bit more. Yeah. But like most channels that do this, there are going to be some subjects that you just can't make funny because they're too devastating.
Exactly. But any chance you get that you can make it entertaining and funny is definitely a good thing. And plus, you have I definitely get a sense that you definitely have a lot of charisma. You definitely have like a bright energy. And I could tell, like, if I were to ever meet you in person, it would be a thing where it's like, oh, this is a pleasant person to be around. Oh, Sandy seems, I'm going to see her again. Like it's one of those, like, yeah, and I can't wait to show my wife this video and all my friends this video when you upload it and put it out there. But it's really cool. You definitely have the charisma points. So
you're just so sweet.
It's just cool. I like being able to reach out and talk to people from different kind of walks of life and different environments, especially different countries.
Yeah, I love conversations, discussions. Like, that's what I hope to get into more with my channel, are discussions. I'm not much of a debater. I don't like the necessarily, like, there's the conflict. I'd rather just, let's discuss.
Right.
Let's discuss issues and stuff. But I don't like the idea of trying to win a conversation.
Yeah, I understand. A lot of people aren't. I don't know. The thing I enjoy about debating is it's like a psychological game of chess. Mm-hmm. And I love playing chess growing up, and so I kind of, when I get to do it psychologically with somebody, I like being able to kind of get in someone's head a little bit, and sometimes I get into my head, and I'm nowhere near perfect, but hopefully this channel will make me better at it. But because I do feel like I'd be better at impacting that way. Now, there is going to be content that I'm going to upload and that my wife is going to upload that's going to be completely educational, informative, history, politics, American issues, socioeconomics, and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm definitely, I'm always going to be one to debate. I'm never going to turn down a debate.
But we should be wrapping up.
Yeah, we're
it's a fantastic conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, this was definitely a lot of fun. And as my channel gets out there and we get, and mine and my wife's channel and then my personal channels, we start getting more stuff out there, of course, feel free to consume it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm definitely going to be checking it out.
Yeah, I'm sure this is just the first of many wonderful conversations we're going to have.
I hope so. It's going to be cool. You seem like a really chill person, and I like that. I enjoy that. All right.
Okay, well, I am Sandy with Left of the Box. You are?
I'm David with Screaming Into the Wind, and this is my first appearance on YouTube, and I would like to thank Sandy, and I would like to thank Left of the Box for kind of giving me my first little foot into the door of YouTube. This has been a lot of fun, and I really hope we can do this again. This was from my side of the continent to yours. I hope you and yours are doing well, and I wish you all the best. And try to hold Trudeau accountable as much as you possibly can. And I'll do the same for Biden. But no, I appreciate it. But for those of you who would like to contact me on Twitter, I am under Twitter as Screaming Into the Wind.
Link in the description box below.
I will send you all that stuff. But thank you so much, Sandy.
Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.